Gaza's health ministry has recorded a sharp rise in Israeli killings across the Strip. It says 152 Palestinians were killed in July. That is more than any other month this year. 18 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli strikes in Gaza City and Deir al-Balah over the past day. Well, for more on that, I'm joined by Antony Loewenstein. He's the author of the Palestine Laboratory, a book on Israel's arms and surveillance industry. You're joining us, Anthony, from Sydney. It's good to have you on the program. How do you read the last few days, specifically the Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip? Because on the one hand, it looks like what you see every day out of Gaza, but what's specific about this week is only 2-3 days ago, the Board of Peace, led by the U.S., announced that there was in Donald Trump's words, historic roadmap for disarming Hamas and for the pullout of Israeli troops. And in the intervening, 48, 72 hours, we've seen Israel attack positions in Gaza with renewed frequency.
In short, Israel doesn't accept those terms. And the question, as is often the case in these situations, whether it's Iran or Gaza or the West Bank or Lebanon, is the US willing to apply necessary pressure on Israel to stop? And history would suggest the answer is likely no. There, of course, are examples where the Trump administration and others had put pressure on the Israeli government. But the fact is Israel and many in Israel itself, not just the government, do not want that kind of agreement. There's an election in Israel in late October, and all the likely candidates for Prime Minister, Netanyahu, Bennett and others, all think relatively similarly on this issue. There's nuances on the margins, but they all think very similarly. There is no desire, I would argue, and the polls prove this, amongst the Israeli public, Jewish public, to withdraw from Gaza. There's no constituency for that. There are some people who support that, of course, but not very many. So what Israel's doing, yes, is business as usual. The US thus far has applied no pressure, and ultimately Israel's getting away with it. So the question is, will Trump and people around him change that? Skepticism, I think, is warranted, as usual, in these situations.
What do you read, if anything, into the exact way that Israel has conducted its strikes over the last 2-3 days? Because this is one of your areas of expertise, the munitions, the tactics, the kinetic environment of Israel.
Yeah. Look, one of the things that has been clear since October 7 is, and Israel is not, I think, occupying and brutalizing Gaza simply to test weapons. That would be wrong. But certainly it's a massive part of their thinking, ideology and budget now. I mean, Israel's in 2025 made over $19 billion from the weapons and surveillance industries. Their industries are booming, and Gaza is a key part of that. If you go to many global arms fairs, if you see Israeli defense companies from Paris to Germany and beyond, places in the Middle East where they go to arms fairs like Dubai, you regularly see Gaza explained and said that we are battle testing weapons and surveillance tech. So that could be drones or various kind of other forms of surveillance technology. So it's a massive part of Israel's arsenal. So again, to be clear, Israel's not staying in Gaza simply to test weapons, but ultimately Israel's economy now is hugely fueled by this sector, and it's growing. And it worries me deeply that many other countries are seeing that and wanting to copy it. So whether it's AI warfare, so when a lot of countries say they're against what Israel is doing, what I often say is look at the rhetoric versus the reality. Many countries actually are buying that equipment that they publicly are saying they oppose.
Is Israel, to your knowledge, still using AI for its targeting inside the Gaza Strip?
Yes. In short, yes. They're using it in Lebanon, and also they've been using it in Iran. And in fact, more and more Israeli military figures say that that needs to be accelerated, meaning that in years to come, this will not be unique to Gaza, of course, that targeting will be solely decided by machine learning. No human interaction. Now, obviously, humans will initially input certain data points, but Israel is still gathering day after day massive amounts of information on every single Palestinian in the West Bank and certainly Gaza, and that it's being used to target, as it is in the West Bank, by the way. So yes, the short answer is yes, and it should worry us, and it gets far too little attention.
You know, the reason I ask you the question is because very often the reporting from our reporters on the ground, and it was the case again today, is that there's been a strike by Israel, and what we see as a family has been decimated. And sometimes it's only women and children, not always, but sometimes. And sometimes you'll have people who knew the targets who will say they were not militants, they were not Hamas, they were certainly not combatants. And I just wonder what the quote-unquote settings are on the AI targeting to get to that result.
One of the things that became very clear after October 7, and again, Israel has been using AI before then, but in the last 3 or so years it's accelerated, is mass destruction and mass killing is the point, not pinpoint targeting. Yes, it's true in Lebanon and Iran at times Israel has gone after particular leaders or nuclear scientists and killed them, in their bedroom while they're sleeping. So pinpoint targeting can happen. I mean, I'm opposed to those attacks as well. In Gaza, the point from the beginning, from October 7, 2023, and this is based on intelligence sources, the military saying it publicly and privately, is it was mass destruction. It was to level Gaza, target as many civilians and supposed militants as possible. And we see the result. Gaza no longer exists. So when they're targeting men, women and children, most of whom are not militants, have no connection to Hamas or any kind of military activity, the point is very clear. It is, as I've argued and others, the aim is to make Gaza so unlivable that Palestinians there are either forced to move or live somewhere else. And ultimately, I think the goal is to have an endless military occupation, as it has been the case in Gaza for decades. The Israeli troops were stationed outside Gaza since the election 20 or so years ago when Hamas took control. The aim is to continue that, regardless of what Trump might say or want. If he doesn't put pressure on Israel to change that, that will not, unfortunately, alter. And that's what worries many of us, including Palestinian friends of mine in Gaza.
You reminded us earlier that there's an election, obviously, in Israel. That's late October. Currently, Benjamin Netanyahu, his right-wing coalition, are behind in the polls. If they lose, if somebody else runs the government of Israel and makes the key political decisions, does any of this change in Gaza, starting with maybe actually signing up to this roadmap that Donald Trump announced 2-3 days ago?
I don't want to be too depressing for viewers, but the truth is that every single key likely alternative to Netanyahu have very, very similar views, not just on Gaza, but on the West Bank. Will they potentially sign up to something? I mean, maybe they will, who knows? But ultimately, a piece of paper is worthless if it's not enforced, if there's no accountability. And there is a decent, sizable proportion of the Israeli Jewish public that supports the status quo in the West Bank and in Gaza. So, yes, Netanyahu is slightly behind in the polls. His party, the Likud, in fact, is currently leading in most of the polls. He can't make up government on his own. He needs a coalition, and every single mainstream Israeli Jewish party refuses to make any deals with any Arab parties. They refuse to, which goes to the heart of Israel's racism at its core. So, look, the short answer to your question is it's possible they'll sign up to something, but the bottom line is the ultimate view of most Israelis, Israeli Jews, is very, very similar to Netanyahu's policies in Gaza and the West Bank. And that is why many of us have argued that the problem in Israel is not Netanyahu, even his coalition. It's the Israeli Jewish public that views occupation and dehumanization as normal, as acceptable. And that's something we have to be very aware of.
Antony Loewenstein, author of the Palestine Laboratory, joining us from Sydney. Thank you very much.
Thank you.